At 11:42 p.m., my mother's voice filled my hotel room like a silk glove wrapped around a blade. Mara, it is not too late to stop this. Do not make us sit beside a night shift aide and pretend we are proud. 5 minutes later, my father sent 3 pages explaining why the man I loved did not belong in our family. My brother Preston did not call. That would have required courage, and Preston preferred applause. He posted a story instead, white letters over a black screen. Some people confuse rescue projects with love. I sat on the edge of the bed in my bridal suite, still wearing sweatpants and one of Caleb's old Penn State shirts, staring at my phone until the words blurred. Outside the window, the garden venue was dark, except for the string lights already hung across the courtyard. By morning, those lights would glow over white chairs, folded programs, peach roses, and the kind of silence only a family can make when it wants to punish you politely. The RSVP list was open on my laptop. 30 names from the Winslow side. 30 households, cousins, old friends of my parents, women who had watched me grow up at country club luncheons, men who had shaken my father's hand after lectures about community ethics. Not one of them had confirmed. Together, they represented 60 dinner plates I had paid for. Herb-roasted chicken, salmon with lemon butter, roasted potatoes, green beans almondine, 2 kinds of salad, rolls, coffee, wedding cake. The menu looked normal. That almost made it worse. Ordinary things have a cruel way of continuing after your heart gets split open. I called the venue coordinator. "Miss Winslow?" she said, sounding startled. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I need to cancel the 60 meals on the bride's family side." There was a pause. Paper rustled. "I'm so sorry. Do you want us to adjust the seating chart? We can move guests around so it won't look so noticeable." I looked at my mother's voicemail still sitting there, unopened again, but not unheard. I looked at my father's email with its careful paragraphs about education, values, long-term social reality. I looked at Preston's story, still glowing with the cowardice of a man who enjoyed throwing stones from behind tinted glass. "No," I said. "Leave the chairs." "Are you sure?" "Yes, 30 chairs, left side. Programs on every seat." Another pause. A softer one this time. "All right." When I hung up, the room felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ribs. My name is Mara Winslow. I was 32 years old the night I learned that a family can abandon you without raising its voice. I worked as an educational content editor for a small publisher in Philadelphia. I paid my own rent, bought my own groceries, changed my own tires when needed, and never once asked my parents to rescue me from the life they kept insisting was too small. But in the Winslow family, independence only counted if it looked impressive in a donor newsletter. My father, Dr. Arthur Winslow, had spent 30 years teaching sociology and speaking about moral responsibility in American communities. He could discuss dignity for 45 minutes without notes. At home, he used silence the way other men use belts. My mother, Vivian Hale Winslow, chaired the Winslow Family Foundation, a charity built around senior dignity. Her favorite slogan was simple enough to fit on banners, brochures, and champagne napkins. "Every elder deserves to be heard." She said it beautifully. She raised money beautifully. She posed beside elderly residents beautifully. My mother could make compassion look elegant from any camera angle. Then there was Preston, 36, real estate developer, golden son, family ornament. He had the polished handshake, the clean jawline, the navy suits, the easy laugh. People called him ambitious. In our house, that word covered almost everything. I was never the scandal. That was the part that made their disappointment so exhausting. I did not gamble, steal, crash cars, or show up drunk at Thanksgiving. I simply failed to become the version of myself they could brag about without explaining. Then I loved Caleb Mercer. Caleb worked nights at Briar Glen Senior Residence as a resident safety coordinator and certified nursing assistant. He drove an aging pickup, lived in a small South Philly apartment, and came home smelling faintly of antiseptic, coffee, and winter air. He did not have a trust fund, a famous last name, or a resume my father could admire over bourbon. What he had was harder for my family to understand. He listened. That should not have been revolutionary. Humanity has set the bar underground and still manages to trip over it. But Caleb listened when my grandmother, Nana Evelyn, said she was scared. He listened when others called her confused. He wrote things down. He asked permission before touching her hand. He treated fear like evidence, not inconvenience. That was the real crime, I think. Not that Caleb was poor by Winslow standards. Not that he worked nights. Not that he wore scrubs more often than suits. His crime was that he made my family's kindness look staged. I stood and walked to the garment bag hanging on the closet door. My wedding dress waited inside. Soft ivory lace, pearl buttons down the back. Sleeves my mother had called a little modest before she stopped pretending to help. For a moment, I imagined her there in the morning. Mom behind me zipping the dress, Dad waiting at the aisle, Preston rolling his eyes but standing anyway. A normal family, a normal wedding, a normal love. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Preston. Don't embarrass yourself tomorrow. I stared at it until something inside me went cold and clear. I typed back one sentence. I won't be the one embarrassed. Then I turned off the phone, set it face down on the nightstand, and looked out toward the garden where 30 empty chairs were waiting in the dark. They thought those chairs would prove I had been rejected. By morning, they would prove something else. They would prove I had stopped covering for them. The Winslow house sat on a quiet street in Bryn Mawr, behind trimmed hedges and a black iron gate that opened without a sound. Everything about that house had been designed to suggest permanence. Stone walls, tall windows, brass fixtures polished until they looked offended by fingerprints. Even the front steps seemed to say, behave before entering. I grew up learning that tone mattered more than truth. My father never slammed doors. Dr. Arthur Winslow did not need to. He could lower his glasses, take one slow breath, and make a room feel like a courtroom. At dinner, he asked questions the way other fathers gave hugs. Have you thought through the consequences? Is that the best use of your potential? Do you understand how this will be perceived? He taught sociology at Villanova for most of his career, then retired into lectures, advisory boards, and long lunches with people who used the word community as if they owned it. His students called him brilliant. Local papers called him principled. At home, he called disappointment perspective. My mother was different, but not softer. Vivian Hale Winslow never raised her voice unless she was laughing for donors. She wore cream blouses, pearl earrings, and perfume so subtle it felt expensive out of spite. When she corrected me, she smiled first. That was how I knew it would hurt. Mara, Mom is just concerned. That sentence followed me through childhood like a shadow with good posture. She was concerned when I quit ballet at 12 because I hated performing for women who judged my ankles. Concerned when I chose public school friends over the daughters of her foundation board members. Concerned when I studied education and publishing instead of law, finance, or nonprofit leadership, which she said would fit the family legacy. By the time I was 25, I understood the rule. My mother did not want a daughter. She wanted a continuation. Preston understood the game early and played it beautifully. My older brother had been born with the strange gift of making selfishness look strategic. When he broke curfew, he was independent. When I questioned anything, I was difficult. When he chose real estate development, Dad called it practical. When I chose educational publishing, Mom called it sweet, in the same tone people use for a child's drawing taped to a refrigerator. Preston collected approval the way other boys collected baseball cards. Lacrosse captain, business degree, internship through one of Dad's friends, first condo before 30, Navy suits, firm handshakes, teeth too white to be trusted. At family gatherings, people asked him about projects. They asked me if I was still doing the book thing. I learned to smile. That is another skill daughters in polished families learn early. Smile when dismissed. Smile when corrected. Smile when someone insults your life and calls it guidance. Nana Evelyn never asked me to smile. Evelyn Hale was my mother's mother, though you would never guess it from the way Mom treated patience like an outdated habit. Nana had been a second-grade teacher for nearly 40 years. She kept birthday cards from former students in shoeboxes, remembered which children hated reading until someone gave them the right book, and believed apple pie should have nutmeg because cinnamon alone was lazy baking. She called me my brave girl before I had done anything brave enough to deserve it. When I was little, I spent weekends at her yellow house near Wayne. She let me crack eggs badly, spill flour, and read out loud in silly voices. If I cried, she did not ask whether I had embarrassed myself. She asked where it hurt. After my grandfather died, Nana stayed in that house alone for almost 12 years. She kept his old cardigan over the back of his chair and played Moon River on Sunday mornings while the coffee brewed. She forgot small things sometimes. Where she put her reading glasses, whether she had watered the basil, the name of a new neighbor. Then she fell. It happened in late October, on the back steps after rain. Nothing dramatic, no cinematic scream because real fear is rarely polite enough to announce itself. A neighbor found her, sitting on the wet brick, one slipper gone, her left wrist bruised, her eyes furious with herself. After that, the forgetfulness changed shape. Some days Nana was entirely herself. She remembered recipes, old students, the exact year my mother had cut her own bangs and blamed the babysitter. Other days, she repeated the same question 3 times in 10 minutes. She got anxious after sunset. She called me once at 4:15 p.m., whispering that someone had moved the hallway, as if the walls had betrayed her. My mother called it decline. Nana called it fog with rude manners. At first, we tried help at home, a visiting aid, meal delivery, a medical alert button Nana hated and wore only when I threatened to tape it to her sweater. But Vivian said it was not enough. She said Nana needed structure, safety, professional care. She said Briar Glen Senior Residence was the best place. What she meant was that Briar Glen was elegant enough not to embarrass her. The day we moved Nana in, Mom wore a camel coat and carried a folder of paperwork. Preston checked his phone in the lobby. Dad complimented the facility director on the landscaping. Everyone behaved as if we had chosen a resort instead of a smaller life for an old woman who had once taught half the county how to read. Nana stood in the doorway of her new room, looking at the bedspread, the framed watercolor, the cheerful vase of silk flowers. Then she reached for my hand. "If I forget little things," she said quietly, "don't let them make me disappear." I promised her. At the time, I thought keeping that promise meant visiting often, bringing fresh socks, writing down doctor appointments, and making sure she had her favorite tea. I did not yet understand that one day, keeping that promise would mean standing against every person who had taught me to be quiet. Briar Glen Senior Residence sat behind a curved driveway lined with dogwoods and tasteful stone lanterns, as if aging itself could be made less frightening with the right landscaping. The building was 3 stories of cream brick, tall windows, and flower boxes that looked freshly arranged even in February, which should have been illegal on principle. Inside, the lobby smelled like lemon polish, coffee, and money. A baby grand piano stood near the sitting area. Framed photographs showed smiling residents painting pumpkins, holding therapy dogs, and laughing over board games no one in the pictures appeared to be playing correctly. A receptionist greeted every visitor by last name. Staff moved through the halls in soft shoes and softer voices. It was the kind of place that made adult children feel better before the older person had even sat down. Mom loved it immediately. "See, Mara," she said on move-in day, touching my elbow as if guiding me through a museum. "This is not some depressing nursing home. This is dignified." Nana heard her and lifted one eyebrow. "Dignified places don't usually have to announce it," she whispered to me. That was Nana. Fog or no fog, her aim was still excellent. Briar Glen had assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing support by shift. The brochures explained everything in soothing language: personalized care plans, family communication, medication support, enrichment activities, safety monitoring. Every phrase had been sanded smooth until it could not draw blood. My mother kept the brochure in her foundation folder. That should have told me more than it did. The Winslow Family Foundation was preparing for its 25th anniversary gala that fall, and Mom had turned the event into a crown jewel. The campaign was called the Senior Dignity Fund, with a fundraising goal of $1.28 million. There would be a ballroom dinner, silent auction, donor video, local press, and my father at the podium, explaining why aging Americans deserve to be heard. Briar Glen Healthcare Group was the platinum sponsor. $272,000. Their logo would appear on the stage backdrop, the program cover, the donor wall, the foundation website, and probably the inside of my mother's eyelids. Mom spoke their name with the careful warmth she reserved for large checks. "They are doing remarkable work," she said. I looked down the hallway where Nana's room sat 3 doors from the activity lounge. "I hope so." Mom gave me a look. Not angry, worse, patient. "Mara, skepticism is not wisdom." In our family, that meant stop noticing things. At first, Briar Glen seemed fine. Nana's room had a window facing a courtyard, a recliner with blue fabric, and enough shelf space for framed photos. I brought her old quilt from home, her tea tin, and a small speaker so she could play Moon River on Sunday mornings. She complained about the soup being too salty and the pillows being too fat, which actually reassured me. Nana only criticized places where she felt alive enough to be picky. Preston visited once during the first week, stayed 22 minutes, and spent 14 of them taking calls in the hallway. "This place is top tier," he told me when he returned, sliding his phone into his coat pocket. "You should be grateful Mom found it." "For Nana," I said. "What?" "Mom found it for Nana." He smiled like I had made a small emotional error. "Same thing." No, it was not. But back then, I still saved my arguments for moments I thought could be won. Adorable little habit. Humans do love rationing their dignity. By March, small things began to bother me. Nana's cardigan went missing twice. Her favorite tea tin moved from the shelf to a locked supply cabinet, though no one could explain why. She told me one evening that a man had come into her room after midnight. But when I asked for details, she became embarrassed and said, maybe it had been a dream. Mom told me not to feed the confusion. Dad said memory decline often expressed itself through suspicion. Preston said, "Mara, she's 84. Things are going to sound weird sometimes." Then the bills changed. I was not handling Nana's finances. Mom had arranged for Preston to hold limited financial power of attorney for care payments and service packages because, as she put it, Preston is better with complicated paperwork. Meaning Preston wore suits and I had feelings. A devastating legal distinction, apparently. Still, Nana kept her mail habits. She had always opened envelopes with a butter knife and stacked bills by date. One afternoon, while I helped organize her drawer, I saw a Briar Glen statement with charges I did not recognize. Private monitoring add-on, family liaison processing, enhanced evening support. The amounts were not huge by Winslow standards, but they repeated. Clean little charges, month after month, wearing respectable names like masks. I asked Preston about them at Sunday dinner. He did not even look up from slicing his steak. Standard care fees. What do they cover? Care, Mara. That is not an answer. It is if you understand how senior residences bill. Mom set down her wine glass. Your brother has it handled. Across the table, Dad gave me the tired look he used when I was turning a pleasant meal into a moral inconvenience. A week later, I overheard Preston on the phone in my parents' study, his voice low and polished. He was talking about a senior living development in Montgomery County, an investment group, zoning concerns, and the Briar Glen relationship. When he stepped into the hall and saw me, he smiled too quickly. Work call, he said. I gathered. It has nothing to do with Nana. I had not asked that. That spring, Mom's Foundation newsletter featured Nana in a paragraph about honoring our elders through compassionate partnerships. There was a photo of Mom holding Nana's hand in the Briar Glen courtyard. Nana looked small beside her. Pretty. Useful. I called Nana that evening. She answered after the fourth ring. "Hi, Nana. It's me." "I know your voice, my brave girl," she said, and I smiled. Then she lowered her tone. "Mara?" "Yes?" "Did you change my pills?" The smile left my face. "No, why would you ask that?" There was a silence, thin and frightened. "They look different at night," she whispered. "And when I tell them, they say I forgot." A door clicked somewhere on her end of the line. Nana stopped breathing for a second. Then, in a voice suddenly too bright, she said, "I should go now. They're checking the rooms." The call ended before I could ask who they were. At 1:41 a.m., my phone rang hard enough to rip me out of sleep. Rain slapped my apartment windows. Then I saw the caller ID. Briar Glen Senior Residence. "Miss Winslow?" a man said. "This is Caleb Mercer, the night resident safety coordinator. I'm with Mrs. Hale." My mouth went dry. "Is she hurt?" "No visible injury. The nurse checked her vitals, but she's frightened, and she keeps asking for you." "What happened?" "She says her medication looked different tonight, and she believes someone entered her room after midnight." "Did someone?" "I can't confirm that yet. I don't want to dismiss her, and I don't want to tell you something I don't know." That sounded almost radical. "I'm coming." I called my mother 3 times. No answer. Preston went straight to voicemail. Dad did not answer. So I drove through the February rain, seeing Nana in my mind, sitting somewhere cold, while everyone who claimed to love her slept beautifully. Briar Glen looked different at night. Without sunlight and brochure smiles, the building seemed too large. At the end of the east wing, I saw Nana. She sat near the window alcove, wrapped in a pale blue cardigan too thin for the hour. Caleb knelt a few feet in front of her, not crowding her, not touching her, not speaking over her. He looked up when I approached. Tired eyes, navy scrubs. Nothing dramatic. That was the first thing I trusted. "Nana," I said. Her face crumpled. "Mara." I moved toward her, but Caleb lifted one hand slightly. "She startles if people move in fast right now," he said. "Mrs. Hale, is it okay if Mara sits beside you?" Nana nodded. That tiny question hit me harder than it should have. Permission. Such a small thing. Such a rare one. I sat beside her and took her hand only after she reached for mine. "They changed them," she whispered. "The pills?" "The little white one was yellow tonight, and there was a man at my door. I heard the handle." Caleb opened a small notebook. "Mrs. Hale, can you tell Mara what we wrote down?" Nana swallowed. "After the medicine, I felt swimmy, not sleepy, like the floor was soft." Caleb did not correct her wording. He wrote it exactly. "I've asked the nurse to review the medication record," he told me. "I'm documenting what Mrs. Hale reported. I can't release medical records without authorization, but if she wants you involved, there are forms." "She has memory issues," I said. "I understand," Caleb said. "Memory issues don't mean fear is meaningless." Nana stared at him as if no one had ever said anything so kind in a hallway. Then soft music played from his phone. Moon River. My throat tightened. "How did you know?" "Mrs. Hale told me bad coffee tasted better with good music." For the first time that night, Nana almost smiled. The nurse arrived with a guarded expression. Caleb asked her to check the medication log against the current blister pack. He did not accuse or perform. He simply refused to let the moment disappear. Nana leaned against my shoulder. "They said I get confused," she murmured. I looked at Caleb's notebook, at the exact words he had written. "Then we'll write it down," I said. "All of it." The first time I saw Caleb stop a wheelchair, I thought something was wrong. A new aide was pushing Mr. Benton down the hall too quickly. Mr. Benton had been a mechanic before arthritis bent his hands. He still carried an old wrench because, as Nana said, some men need to feel useful. Caleb stepped in front of the chair. "Tell him first," he said. The aide frowned. "He's scheduled for activities." Caleb looked at Mr. Benton. "Cars in the lounge or 5 more minutes with coffee?" Mr. Benton's cloudy eyes shifted. "Coffee." 5 minutes, Caleb said. The aide looked annoyed, young enough to think efficiency was the same as care. Caleb did not lecture him. He waited until the chair stayed still. That was how Caleb worked. Small corrections, quiet respect, no applause. Over the next weeks, I visited Nana after work. Briar Glen changed by the hour. At 2 in the afternoon, it was piano music and smiling volunteers. After 9, it became squeaking carts, dim lights, call buttons, and people who woke afraid. Caleb knew the night version. He knew Mrs. Alice panicked if her door was closed, so he left it open 2 inches. He knew Mr. Leonard refused dinner if the tomato soup was lukewarm, so he asked the kitchen to reheat it. He knew Nana hated being called sweetie. "She taught 2nd grade for 40 years, he told one aide. "She has earned her name." Mrs. Hale. Always Mrs. Hale. One evening, I found him at the nurse's station, filling out a report beside cold coffee. "Do you ever sit down?" I asked. Briefly, like a suspicious bird. It was the first joke I heard from him, dry and tired enough to feel earned. I asked why he chose this work. He capped his pen and lowered his voice. "I grew up in foster homes. Some good, some just licensed. My last foster mother, Ruth, developed dementia when I was 19. Her relatives talked over her like she was furniture with a pulse." He swallowed once. She knew when people stopped treating her like she was still in the room. I did not know what to say. Caleb gave a small shrug. "So, I work nights. People tell the truth at night, even when they don't mean to." At the Winslow house, good deeds were framed in a flattering light. My mother could turn a handshake into a campaign image. My father could turn compassion into a lecture. Preston could turn a visit with Nana into a networking anecdote. Caleb did none of that. He noticed when Nana's hands trembled after evening medications. He noticed when she avoided one hallway. He noticed when she was embarrassed by fear and changed the subject to apple pie. He never told me to trust him. He gave me reasons. One Sunday, I mentioned him at dinner as a staff member who had been kind to Nana. Mom paused with her fork halfway over her salad. "Caleb," she said, "is he the overnight caregiver?" "Resident safety coordinator," I said, "and a CNA. So, caregiving." There it was, that soft little drop in her voice, the one that made an honest job sound like gum on the bottom of her shoe. "Yes," I said, "caregiving." For once, I did not make the word smaller for her comfort. Caleb and I did not fall in love in a way my mother would have respected. There was no country club dinner, no family friend making introductions, no tasteful wine pairing, no mutual resume review, no polite conversation about where people summered. It happened in pieces. A paper cup of coffee left beside me at 10:15 p.m. because I had forgotten to eat dinner. A text after Nana had a calm night. A walk to my car in freezing rain without making a show of it. Caleb remembering that I hated artificial vanilla creamer, which somehow felt more intimate than half the birthday gifts my parents had ever chosen. After long visits at Briar Glen, we sometimes stopped at a diner outside Ardmore. Caleb ordered black coffee and scrambled eggs, no matter the hour. I always said I was not hungry, then stole his toast. He never commented, he just started ordering extra. That was Caleb. He made room without announcing it. One Friday after his shift, he drove me through South Philly in his old pickup, the heater clicking like it had moral objections. We ate cheesesteaks wrapped in paper, sitting on a bench while morning traffic coughed awake around us. "This is not exactly glamorous," he said. "I grew up around glamorous," I told him. "It is mostly uncomfortable chairs and people pretending not to be hungry." He laughed, and the sound stayed with me longer than it should have. His apartment was small, third floor, narrow stairs, one window that looked onto a brick wall. The furniture did not match. The kitchen table had one wobbly leg. His work schedule was taped to the refrigerator beside a grocery list, a magnet from Cape May, and a photo of an older woman with silver hair and laughing eyes. "Ruth?" I asked. He nodded. "My last foster mom." On the bookshelf were manuals about dementia care, a battered copy of The Old Man and the Sea, and a shoebox full of thank you cards from families of former residents. "Why don't you put these somewhere?" I asked. He closed the lid gently. "Those were people, Mara, not trophies." I thought about my mother's office, where photographs of charity dinners lined the walls in silver frames, proof of kindness, mounted and lit. At Caleb's place, kindness sat in a shoebox because it had already done its job. When I finally told Mom I was seeing someone, she asked one question before I had even finished his name. "What does he do?" Not, "Is he kind?" Not, "Does he make you happy?" Those would have been too dangerously human. "He works nights at Briar Glen," I said. "Resident safety. He's also a CNA." There was a pause sharp enough to cut fruit. "So," she said, "caregiving." "Yes." Mara, men like that can be very sincere and still not be suitable. Suitable. My family loved that word. It sounded cleaner than rich, safer than impressive, kinder than acceptable. It was judgment wearing perfume. Dad was more academic about it, which somehow made it worse. "I am not questioning his decency," he said later over the phone. "I am asking whether you have considered the difference in education, background, and long-term social reality." Social reality? Mata. That was Dad's warning bell. My name, lowered by half an octave. Preston did what Preston always did. He searched Caleb online and came back with nothing he could admire. "No Ivy League, no assets, no real career ladder," he said. "Come on, Mara. He knows what your last name means." "He has never asked me for anything." Preston smiled. "That is usually how it starts." I should have been embarrassed. Instead, I felt something inside me finally step back and look at them clearly. They were not afraid Caleb would use me. They were afraid I would choose a life they could not display. That night, Caleb and I walked along the Schuylkill River. The air smelled like wet pavement and cold water. I told him enough. Not everything, but enough. He did not tell me to cut them off. He did not call them monsters. He did not make my pain into a speech about himself. He just walked beside me until I stopped shaking. Then he said, "You don't have to burn a house down to stop living in it." I looked at him. This man my family thought was beneath me, with tired eyes and rough hands and more grace than all their polished rooms combined. For the first time, I wondered if love was not supposed to feel like earning a place at the table. Maybe love was the person who noticed you had been standing too long and quietly pulled out a chair. My mother invited Caleb to Sunday dinner as if she were offering peace. She was not. The dining room in Bryn Mawr had always looked more like a room meant to impress guests than feed people. Tall windows, pale walls, a mahogany table long enough to make every conversation feel negotiated. Mom had brought out the good china, the crystal water glasses, linen napkins folded into sharp little triangles, and a centerpiece of white hydrangeas that looked too perfect to be alive. Caleb noticed everything. I saw it in his eyes. Not envy, calculation. He was learning the room the way he learned a resident's breathing pattern at night. Mom greeted him at the door in a cream sweater and pearl earrings. "Caleb," she said, offering her hand. "So nice to finally meet Mara's friend." Boyfriend would have cost her nothing. That was why she refused to say it. Caleb shook her hand. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Winslow." Dad entered from the study wearing a navy jacket, no tie, casual in the way expensive men are casual when they still want credit for it. "Mr. Mercer," he said. "Dr. Winslow." Preston was already in the dining room, leaning against the sideboard with a glass of bourbon. He smiled at Caleb like he had found something amusing under his shoe. "Caleb, night shift, right?" "Yes." That must be tough. It can be. Preston waited for more. Caleb gave him nothing. Beautiful. I nearly applauded, but apparently adults are expected to behave in dining rooms. A tragedy for civilization. Nana Evelyn sat at the table in a blue cardigan, her silver hair pinned loosely back. She seemed clear that evening, though tired. When Caleb stepped into the room, she brightened. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "did you rescue Mr. Leonard from cold soup again?" Caleb smiled. "Twice this week, Mrs. Hill." Mom's mouth tightened. Dinner began with butternut squash soup, and the kind of silence people pretend is elegance. Dad asked Caleb where he had gone to school. Caleb answered without apology. Community college first, then certification programs, continuing education for elder care, CNA training. Dad nodded slowly. "Do you intend to move beyond night work?" I set my spoon down. Caleb did not. "I intend to keep doing work that matters," he said. "The schedule may change. The point won't." Preston gave a soft laugh. "Come on. Your job is basically babysitting old people while they sleep, isn't it?" The table went still. Nana looked down at her soup. Mom said nothing. Dad adjusted his glasses. I felt heat rise in my chest so fast it almost scared me. Caleb wiped his mouth with a napkin, then looked directly at my brother. "On good nights, yes," he said. "On bad nights, I make sure they're still safe by morning." No anger, no performance. Just the sentence, placed cleanly on the table beside the silverware. Preston's smile thinned. Mom reached for her wine glass. "I'm sure it is very meaningful work." Meaningful. Another one of those words people use when they want to praise something without respecting it. Nana turned toward Caleb. "Do they still play music in the West Hallway?" "When Mrs. Alice gets restless," he said, softly. "Good," Nana whispered. "She hates closed doors." Mom looked at me. "Mata, I didn't realize Caleb had become so familiar with everyone." "He pays attention," I said. "That is not a flaw, Vivian," Nana added. A mother's face changed for half a second. Not enough for a stranger to notice. Plenty for a daughter. The roast chicken arrived. Preston carved, because of course he did. Men like Preston love knives when someone else had already done the cooking. Halfway through dinner, Nana touched my wrist. "Mara, did you ever look at those charges?" "What charges?" Mom asked quickly. Nana blinked. "On the Bry Glenn bill. Private something. Family something." Preston sighed. "Nana, we went over this." "No, we didn't," I said. He gave me a warning look. "They're care fees." "What do they cover?" "Enhanced support." "That's not an answer." The dad's voice entered, smooth and tired. "Mata, your grandmother's recall around administrative matters has not been reliable." Nana's hand withdrew from mine. There it was, the family trick. Do not answer the question. Question the person asking. Caleb did not speak. He looked at Nana, not with pity, but with attention. That seemed to steady her more than all of us combined. After dessert, Mom walked Preston and Dad into the study, pretending they needed to discuss a donor. Nana stayed in the sitting room with her tea. Caleb and I stood near the front hall beneath my parents' framed charity photographs. "I'm sorry," I said. "For what?" "For them." He looked toward the dining room. "They know how to make a person feel small without leaving fingerprints." That sentence landed somewhere deep. I wanted to defend them. Habit is a stubborn parasite. But the words would not come. Caleb lowered his voice. "Ask for her records while she's clear. Medication logs, billing statements, care plan. Get her written permission. Paper remembers what people deny." Through the doorway, I saw Nana sitting alone beneath a photograph of my mother, receiving an award for elder advocacy. Her teacup trembled slightly in her hand. For the first time, I understood that my family's cruelty toward Caleb was only the surface. Underneath it, something else had been waiting to be named. The next morning, Nana was sharp enough to complain about the oatmeal. "That is not breakfast," she told me, pushing the bowl away. "That is paced with self-esteem." I laughed harder than the joke deserved because I needed proof she was still there. Not every minute, not every day, but enough. Enough to know her own mind when the fog lifted. I had asked Denise Alvarez to meet us at Briar Glen at 9:30 a.m. Denise was an independent patient advocate recommended by a former colleague for my publishing job. She was compact, calm, and wore reading glasses on the chain, the kind of woman who could make a clipboard look like a weapon. She did not rush Nana. "Mrs. Hale," Denise said, sitting across from her, "I'm going to explain this in plain English. If you sign this form, you are allowing Mara to request certain records about your care here. Medication records, your care plan, billing connected to your services. You can say no. You can change your mind later. Do you understand?" Nana looked offended. "I taught second grade for 40 years. I understand a permission slip." Denise smiled. "Then forgive me for doing my job." "I respect that," Nana said. "I just dislike being treated like a decorative lamp." There she was, my Nana. Denise asked her the date, where she was, who I was, and what she wanted me to help with. Nana answered clearly. She forgot the exact day of the week, then corrected herself after looking at the newspaper on the side table. Denise noted that too, because truth did not need to pretend people were perfect. Nana signed the HIPAA authorization with a hand that shook, but did not hesitate. I watched the pen move across the page and felt something inside me shift. For months, my family had turned every concern into emotion, too sensitive, too dramatic, too attached. Now, there was ink. Denise made copies, one for Nana, one for me, one submitted to Briar Glen's records office. The woman behind the records desk accepted the packet with a professional smile that died slightly when she saw Denise's business card. "We'll have to route this through privacy review," she said. "Of course," Denise replied. "Please stamp receipt with today's date." The smile died a little more. By the end of the week, Briar Glen had not sent anything. By the second week, I had 3 emails full of soft language and no records. They were reviewing. They were coordinating. They were ensuring compliance. They appreciated my patience. Humanity has invented thousands of ways to say no without being honest. Email may be its finest sower. Then a billing statement arrived in Nana's mail. Premium care package. Private monitoring add-on. Family liaison processing. Enhanced evening support. I spread the pages across my kitchen table and called Preston. He answered on speaker. I could hear traffic, probably from his car. "What now, Mara?" "What does family liaison processing cover?" A sigh. "Administrative communication." "With whom?" "With the family." "I'm the family. No one communicated with me." "Because I handle billing." "Why?" "Under limited financial power of attorney. That does not make you Nana's owner." His voice cooled. "Careful. No, Preston. Specific. It's standard. You keep using that word because you don't have an answer." He went quiet long enough for me to hear a turn signal clicking. Then he said, "You are letting that night shift guy fill your head." I hung up before I said something useful to his ego. That afternoon, Mom called. "Mara, your brother's trying to keep things organized." "Why was he allowed to approve a premium package without telling me?" "Because you get emotional around your grandmother." "No, I get honest around her." Mom inhaled softly, as if I had spilled red wine on linen. "This is exactly what I mean." So I did what Caleb had told me. I kept the paper, the stamped receipt, the authorization, the billing pages, the emails that said everything except the truth. That night, I searched Preston's company filings and project announcements. It took less than an hour to find the phrase Senior Living Development beside Montgomery County Investment Partnership and Briar Glen Healthcare Group. My brother was not just managing Nana's bills. He was standing near a deal that needed Briar Glen to stay clean. If you are listening right now, leave a like and tell me in the comments what you would tell Mara to do when a family hides control behind the word concern. Because something much bigger is waiting behind those billing pages, and the Winslow name is about to learn that paper can be sharper than rage. I printed everything. Then I slid the copies into a waterproof folder and wrote Nana Evelyn across the tab. For the first time in my life, I was not preparing an argument for my family. I was preparing evidence. Caleb changed before he admitted anything. At first, it was small. He stopped texting me after every shift. He answered later. His jokes got thinner. When I asked about Nana, he gave careful updates that sounded less like him and more like a policy manual wearing his voice. She had a better evening. The nurse was notified. I documented what I observed. Documented. Not saw. Not worried about. Documented. One night, I found him outside Briar Glen, near the employee entrance, standing under the yellow security light with his coat unzipped and coffee untouched in his hand. "You look awful," I said. "Romantic." "I mean it." "I know." He tried to smile, but it did not reach his eyes. Inside, Nana had been restless again. She told me her evening pill looked different, then got embarrassed and changed the subject to whether I owned a warm enough coat. That was Nana's way of retreating. She worried about you when she wanted you to stop worrying about her. Caleb had written another report. This one noted dizziness after evening medication, increased confusion within an hour, and Nana's repeated statement that the pill color had changed. He did not accuse anyone. He did not guess. He wrote what he saw, what she said, who was notified, and what time. The next week, his schedule changed. 2 of his regular night shifts were gone, then 3. He was moved off Nana's wing twice. When I asked why, he said staffing rotation. Too quickly. I knew the sound of a polished answer. I have been raised by experts. "Caleb?" He looked away. "What happened?" He rubbed one hand over his face. "Lynn Parker called me in." "The supervisor?" He nodded. "She said I was creating unnecessary concern, that I needed to file reports consistent with team communication." "What does that even mean?" "It means write less." My stomach tightened. "What did you say?" I told her I filed what I saw. For a second, I loved him so fiercely it made me angry. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I can't talk about everything that happens in there." "I'm not asking for someone else's private information. I'm asking why you're being punished for writing down what happened to my grandmother." His jaw worked. "Because if I say the wrong thing, they can say I violated policy. If they fire me for cause, I lose access to the floor. If I lose access, I can't see what happens at night. That is not the same as telling me nothing." "I know." "No, Caleb, I don't think you do." The words came out sharper than I intended, but I did not take them back. I had spent my whole life with people deciding what I could handle. Caleb was not cruel like them. That almost made it worse. His silence had worn a kinder face, but it still left me outside a locked door. He looked at me then, really looked. "I was trying not to break the law," he said quietly. "I didn't understand silence could still hurt you." There was no speech after that. No dramatic rain, no perfect line to mend the tear. Just 2 tired people standing beside a brick wall while Briar Glen glowed behind us like a place with nothing to hide. A few days later, I had one of those work days that makes adulthood feel like a clerical error. A textbook deadline collapsed, an author missed edits, my inbox became a crime scene. When I left the office, Caleb was waiting by his truck. "Walk with me," he said. We drove to the Schuylkill River Trail. The city lights trembled on the water. Early summer air moved soft and damp around us. Caleb walked beside me for a long time without feeling the quiet, which was one of the things he did best. Then he stopped near the railing. "I don't have a perfect life to offer you," he said. I turned. He took a small box from his coat pocket. No velvet drama, no audience. Just Caleb, with tired eyes and hands that had held too many frightened people steady. "I can't promise easy," he said, "but I can promise this. I will never make you earn your place in my life. The ring was simple, a small oval stone warm under the trail lights. I thought of my mother's standards, my father's concerns, Preston's smirk, Briar Glen's soft hallways, Nana's shaking signature. Then I thought of every chair I had tried to deserve at tables where love came with terms and conditions. Yes, I said. Caleb closed his eyes for half a second, like the word had gone through him. When he slid the ring onto my finger, I felt peace first. Fear came later. Because the moment I told my family, I knew they would stop pretending this was concern. They would call it war. I sent the photo of my ring at 8:17 that night. Not to announce victory, not to provoke anyone, just because some childish, stubborn part of me still wanted my mother to be my mother for 30 seconds. Caleb's hand was under mine in the picture, his thumb resting lightly against my knuckle. The ring looked simple, warm, honest. It did not sparkle like something chosen by a committee. That was probably its first offense. Mom replied 11 minutes later. We need to talk before you make this permanent. No congratulations, no question about how he asked, no heart emoji because apparently even punctuation could lower the family standard. Dad sent an email the next morning. 3 pages, single-spaced. He began with, "My dear Mara," which was how I knew the blade had been polished. He wrote that Caleb might be decent, even admirable in a limited way, but marriage required shared education, compatible upbringing, long-term social reality, and a common understanding of responsibility. He said he feared I was confusing gratitude with commitment, a sociology professor's way of saying, he is not one of us. I read it twice. The second time, I stopped crying halfway through and started noticing the arrogance between the commas. Mom asked me to meet her for coffee at the Marion Club 2 days later. I should have known better. In our family, coffee was never coffee. It was a hearing without a judge. She sat near the window in a camel coat, pearls at her ears, a cappuccino untouched in front of her. Beside her sat Dr. Adrian Kell, a widowed cardiologist whose father had donated heavily to the Winslow Family Foundation. Adrian stood when I approached. Mara, your mother has told me so much about you. Apparently not enough, I said. Mom's smile tightened. Adrian was just leaving. He was not. He had been placed there like an exit sign. After he walked away, Mom folded her hands. You are not married yet. I stared at her. That is the last time you say that to me. Ma, don't be dramatic. Then stop staging interventions in Kashmir. Her face changed. A small crack, gone quickly. You are making a mistake with a man who works nights and has no real future. No, Mom. You're making the mistake of thinking a future only counts if donors can applaud it. Preston chose a different approach. He sent me a text. Night help makes a bold leap. Hope he enjoys the latter. I blocked him for 4 hours, then unblocked him because I wanted evidence. Growth is nice, but documentation is better. Annoying how adulthood works. By August, I mailed 30 invitations to the Winslow side. 30 households, 60 meals. Aunts, cousins, my parents' friends, people who had called me sweetheart while asking whether I was still doing the book thing. For 1 week, nothing happened. Then my cousin April forwarded me an email from Mom. Family, Arthur and I cannot in good conscience support a marriage that lowers the standards Mara was raised with. We ask that you respect our position during this painful time. Painful. For her. I sat at my desk at work, reading that line while an author's manuscript blinked on my screen, and something in me went very still. By the RSVP deadline, not one Winslow household had confirmed. A few had opened the invitation link. One mailed back a blank response card. Most said nothing, which was the family's favorite language when cruelty needed clean gloves. Dad did not call. Preston posted his little story. Mom left the voicemail at 11:42 p.m., her voice soft enough to bruise. Mara, it is not too late to stop this. Do not make us sit beside a night shift aide and pretend we are proud. That was when I called the venue and canceled the 60 meals. Do you want us to adjust the seating? The coordinator asked gently. I looked at my ring, then at my mother's voicemail, then at the list of names that had chosen comfort over courage. No, I said. Leave the chairs. 30 empty chairs. 30 clean programs. 30 places where the Winslow family could sit inside the truth they had made. The morning of my wedding smelled like hairspray, rain-washed grass, and roses. Philadelphia had given us one of those late September days that looked gentle from a distance. Pale sun, cool air, leaves just starting to burn gold at the edges. The garden venue sat behind an old stone inn outside the city, with white chairs arranged under a wooden arbor and peach roses tied along the aisle. Everything was ready, except my family. My best friend Lila zipped my dress because my mother was not there. She did it slowly, carefully, pretending the pearl buttons were difficult so I would have time to breathe. Lila had known me since college. She was the kind of woman who could insult your enemies while fixing your veil. A public service more women should receive. You look beautiful, she said. I look abandoned. You look expensive and dangerous. That made me smile, barely. My phone was off. I had decided there would be no last-minute damage. No voicemail from Mom, no academic sermon from Dad, no digital spitball from Preston. If the Winslows wanted to be absent, they could enjoy the full luxury of my not chasing them. A staff member knocked softly. Mara, we're ready. For 1 second, my legs did not move. Then I thought of Caleb. Not Caleb as my family described him. Not the night worker, not the unsuitable man, not the rescue project Preston had sneered about. I thought of Caleb kneeling in a hallway at 1:41 a.m., asking my frightened grandmother for permission before touching her hand. That was enough. When the doors opened, the first thing I saw was the left side. 30 white chairs, 30 folded programs, 30 little spaces where people had chosen reputation over love. The programs moved slightly in the breeze, soft pages lifting and falling like they were breathing for the people who refused to sit there. I did not look away. If they wanted their absence to humiliate me, they had miscalculated. Empty chairs can shame the person walking past them, only if she agrees to carry the shame. I did not. On the right side, Caleb's friend stood. His coworker stood. A few neighbors from his building stood. Lila's parents stood, though they had only met me twice and had apparently decided that was enough to behave decently. Wild concept. Humanity survives on these rare outbreaks. Caleb stood at the end of the aisle in a charcoal suit that fit well, but not perfectly. His hair was combed back, his hands clasped in front of him. He did not look at the chairs. He looked at me. Not with pity, not with apology, with certainty. So I walked. No father gave me away. Good. I was not property, and Arthur Winslow had lost the right to perform tenderness for an audience. Halfway down the aisle, a sound came from behind the guests. The back gate opened. Heads turned. Walter Harris, Nana's old driver, stepped onto the path in a dark suit and polished shoes. He was 70, maybe more, with one hand holding his cap and the other supporting the woman beside him, Nana Evelyn. She wore a soft blue dress and a cream shawl. Her silver hair was pinned unevenly, and her right hand trembled against Walter's sleeve, but her eyes were clear. I stopped walking. For a moment, no one moved. Caleb was the first. He stepped away from the arbor and walked down the aisle toward her. Mrs. Hale, he said, voice low. May I help you to your seat? Nana looked at him with the faintest smile. Only if you promise not to fuss. I'll keep it professional. Liar, she said. A small laugh moved through the right side of the garden. Not loud, just enough to break the spell. Walter helped her forward. Later, I would learn she had called him using a number from her old address book. She was not under full guardianship. Briar Glen had signed her out under visitor transport procedure after Walter showed identification and completed the form. No escape scene, no dramatic rescue, just an old woman using the rights everyone else found inconvenient. When Nana reached me, she took my hand. Her fingers were cold. "I was not too sick to come, sweetheart," she said. "I was only too inconvenient." The words passed through the garden like a door opening in a locked house. I thought I might cry then, but I did not. Something stronger came first. Anger, yes. Grief, too. But underneath both was relief. Someone had finally said aloud what my family had spent years dressing in better language. Caleb helped Nana into the front row on the bride's side. One occupied chair, 30 empty ones behind her. That single blue dress made the whole left side look different. Not abandoned anymore. Witnessed. The ceremony began. When I reached Caleb, he took my hands as though they were something worth holding carefully. The officiant spoke about commitment, patience, mercy. Nice words. The kind people like my parents could quote while missing the point entirely. Then it was my turn. I had written vows the week before, but I did not read them exactly. "Caleb," I said, "you listened when everyone else wanted a cleaner story. You believed fear could mean something before proof made it convenient. I choose you because love with you does not feel like a trial I have to pass." His eyes shone, but he did not look away. When he spoke, his voice shook once. "Mara, I don't have a family name to offer you. I don't have a perfect house or a perfect past, but I have my word, my hands, and every ordinary day I can give you. I will not make you earn the place that is already yours." The rings went on. The kiss was quiet. The applause was not. Afterward, during the small reception, Nana sat near the window with a cup of tea and a slice of lemon cake. Caleb kept checking on her without hovering, which was apparently possible, though my family had spent decades pretending otherwise. I knelt beside her chair. "You scared me," I whispered. "Good," she said. "Keeps the blood moving." And then her smile faded. With effort, she reached into the cloth purse on her lap and pulled out an old yellow envelope, soft at the corners, folded once across the middle. She pressed it into my hand. "Your mother always trusted speeches," Nana said. I trusted notes. I took the yellow envelope into the small bridal room behind the reception hall. My bouquet was still on the vanity, roses drooping slightly in a glass of water. My veil lay across a chair. Outside, people were laughing over cake and coffee, pretending, kindly, that the Winslow side of the room was not almost empty. Caleb followed me in and closed the door. "What is it?" he asked. "I don't know." My hands shook as I opened the flap. Inside were folded papers, receipts, photocopies, and several pages torn from one of Nana's old spiral notebooks. Her handwriting leaned to the right, neat even when the lines wavered. March 6th. White pill at 8:05. Bitter taste. Dizzy by 8:40. Door open after midnight. March 14th. Yellow pill instead of white. Nurse said same medicine. Felt floaty. Asked for Mara. March 21st. Charge on bill. Private monitoring add-on. No one explained. There were more. Dates, times, names when she remembered them, question marks when she did not. Nana had not pretended certainty. She had marked uncertainty honestly, which made the certain parts harder to ignore. I sat down because my knees had become unreliable. Caleb read over my shoulder, his face losing color. "She showed me some of this," he said. "Not all of it." "You knew?" "I knew she was writing things down. I told her it was a good idea." My chest tightened. "And you didn't tell me?" "I couldn't take her notes. I couldn't copy them. They were hers." He looked at the pages, then at me. "Mara, I was trying to stay inside the rules." There it was again. The rules. The thin fence good people cling to while bad people build gates around them. Before I could answer, another paper slipped out. It was a copy of the HIPAA authorization Nana had signed, witnessed by Denise Alvarez. Behind it were billing statements with circles around charges I had seen before. Premium care package, family liaison processing, enhanced evening support. But one page was different. It was an incident report. Caleb's name was at the bottom. Medication discrepancy and billing concern reported by resident. Resident stated pill color appeared different. Resident expressed fear of nighttime room entry. Licensed nurse notified. Follow-up recommended. The words were clean, exact, humane. I looked up at him. This is yours. He swallowed. Yes. You filed this? Yes. And they punished you for it. His silence answered before his mouth did. I unfolded the last document. It was an email chain, printed from a forwarded message. At the top was the name Janice Moore. I knew it vaguely. Former Briar Glen administrative staff. She had left sometime in the spring. The email had been sent to Rachel Donnelly, the elder care attorney Nana had apparently contacted through Denise. I read the highlighted lines once, then again. The original report should not be escalated in current wording. Summary for foundation partner should reflect resident confusion during night shift. Further review may be delayed until after donor event due to Winslow Family Foundation partnership. Resident confusion. 2 words. That was all it took. 2 words to turn Nana's fear into a symptom. 2 words to turn Caleb's report into an inconvenience. 2 words to protect a gala, a sponsor, a stage, a check for $272,000. My mother's slogan flashed in my mind. Every elder deserves to be heard. Apparently, only until hearing her cost too much. I called Rachel Donnelly from the bridal room, still in my wedding dress. She answered on the 3rd ring. Mara? You knew Nana had these? I knew she had concerns. She asked me not to contact you until after she gave you the envelope herself. Why? Rachel's voice softened. She wanted one thing in this mess to be her decision. That nearly broke me. Caleb sat beside me but did not touch me. For once, I was grateful. My skin felt full of lightning. I don't want this online first, I said. I don't want noise before they know what we have. Good, Rachel said. Photograph everything tonight. Keep the original safe. Tomorrow, we send preservation letters and formal complaints. I looked at Caleb. They changed your report. I suspected. You suspected? His eyes closed briefly. I saw the summary later. It was wrong. I challenged it. That is when my schedule changed. The hurt came fast, sharp and unfair, mixed with love and fury. You should have told me. I know. No, Caleb. You should have trusted me with the truth before it arrived in an envelope on our wedding day. He nodded once, taking the sentence because he had earned it. Outside the door, someone laughed loudly, then the sound faded. I gathered Nana's notes back into order, page by page, date by date. Not perfect memory, not flawless proof. Something better than both, a pattern. And patterns, once seen, do not politely disappear. I slid everything back into the envelope and held it against my lap. For years, my family had taught me that dignity lived in speeches, titles, foundations, and rooms full of donors. Nana had just taught me it could live in shaky handwriting on notebook paper. By noon the next day, my wedding had become local gossip. What spread was a 12-second video from Caleb's coworker. Nana stood in her blue dress, holding my hand. They called me confused, she said, her voice thin but clear. Caleb listened. That was all. By breakfast, it was in a private Facebook group for mainline moms. By lunch, someone had posted it under the Winslow Foundation's gala banner. Every elder deserves to be heard. The comments were polite enough to wear pearls and sharp enough to cut glass. People did not know the full story, but they could smell hypocrisy. Lila called while Caleb scanned Nana's notes. Do you want me to post the empty chairs? She asked. No. I can blur faces. There were no faces to blur. That's the point. No, I said again. Not yet. Rage wanted noise. I wanted to tag Briar Glenn, Preston, the board, and every relative who had obeyed Mom's email like trained furniture. Banana's notebook sat beside me. March 14th, yellow pill instead of white. March 21st, charge on bill. April 2nd, door at night. Tiny lines, patient lines, waiting. So I called Rachel Donnelly. She told me to photograph every page, scan every receipt, keep the originals sealed, and make backups. Caleb worked quietly beside me. He did not ask to be forgiven quickly. That helped. By 3 p.m., Rachel had drafted preservation requests to Briar Glen. Medication records, billing records, incident reports, internal emails, camera footage if retained, and anything tied to Evelyn Hale's care package. Send nothing emotional, Rachel said. Let the documents do the talking. Then I sent the request. Denise Alvarez sent her statement too. She confirmed that Nana understood the authorization when she signed it, listed the questions asked, and included the date stamp from Briar Glen. It was calm. That was why it mattered. Next went the complaint packet to the Pennsylvania Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. Not accusations sprayed into the wind, a timeline. Names, dates, copies. At 5:26 p.m., Mom emailed the foundation board. My daughter is in pain after a difficult family event. I fear she is being influenced by individuals who do not understand the broader work of this foundation. My mother's cognitive decline is real, and we must be careful not to exploit it. Exploit. My mother had used Nana's face in brochures and donor newsletters. But now, when Nana's own words threatened the stage, listening to her became exploitation. Preston called next. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad. Mara, your mother has devoted 25 years to this community. Whatever you think you found, please consider what you may destroy. And for once, I did not answer with a defense. I sent him 2 files, Caleb's original report and the summary that changed medication discrepancy and billing concern into resident confusion during night shift. No explanation, no plea, just the paper. Across the table, Caleb looked at me. Are you all right? No. He nodded like that was complete. My phone stayed silent for 14 minutes. Then Dad replied, Where did you get the second document? For the first time, my father was not asking whether I understood the consequences. Preston arrived at 7:10 p.m. with a leather folder under one arm and his wedding ring smile, though he was not married. He used that smile when he needed people to believe the room was still under his control. Caleb opened the door. For half a second, Preston's face tightened. Is Mara here? It's her apartment, Caleb said. Strange place to ask that. I stepped out from the kitchen before Preston could decide whether to be offended. He looked past me at the stacks of scanned copies on the table, the label folders, the printer still warm from another round of documents. His eyes moved too quickly. Good. You've been busy, he said. So have you. He held up the folder. I came to fix this before it hurts Nana. That was Preston's gift. He could wrap a threat in concern and expect applause for the ribbon. I let him in, but I did not offer coffee. Hospitality has limits, and mine had started carrying a clipboard. He sat at my kitchen table and opened the folder with theatrical care. This is a privacy protection agreement, he said. It keeps family matters private, protects Nana's dignity, and prevents outsiders from exploiting a vulnerable woman. Caleb stood behind my chair, quiet, present. I picked up the document. The first page sounded harmless. Confidentiality, mutual respect, responsible communication. All the little phrases people use when they want truth to enter through the back door and leave in a bag. Then I reached page 3. No further request for historical care records without family review. Page 4. No disclosure to third parties except by mutual written agreement. Page 5. All disputes to proceed through private mediation. I looked up. Normal things don't need this many locks. Preston's jaw shifted. You're reading it like an enemy. I'm reading it like an editor. That's cute. No, Preston, that's why you're nervous. His smile died. He leaned back, suddenly tired of pretending. You have no idea what you're doing. Mom's foundation helps thousands of seniors. You are risking all of that because Nana got confused and your night help husband saw an opportunity. Caleb moved then, one step. No anger in his face. That made it worse for Preston. I was night help when your grandmother needed help at night, Caleb said. Where were you? The room went cleanly silent. Preston looked at him like he had been slapped by someone he considered furniture. Then he turned on me. You are going to destroy Mom. No, I said. I found where she buried the truth. She didn't bury anything. She delayed a review until after the gala because adults understand timing. Nana was dizzy in March. The gala is in September. You don't know what was medically relevant. I know what was rewritten. His eyes flicked toward the folders again. I slid Denise Alvarez's statement across the table. Then a copy of Caleb's original report. Then the edited summary. Then Janice Moore's email. Preston did not touch them. That told me plenty. You got those illegally, he said. Rachel Donnelly disagrees. The lawyer Nana called? His voice sharpened before he could hide it. So he knew. There it was, small and bright as a match in a dark room. You knew Nana had outside help, I said. Preston stood. This conversation is over. It ended when you brought me a muzzle and called it privacy. He snatched the folder back, but not before I had taken photos of every page beneath the table. My phone angled against my knee like a teenager cheating on a quiz. Ridiculous method, excellent results. Humanity occasionally redeems itself through petty efficiency. At the door, Preston turned. The board will believe Mom before they believe a woman with cognitive decline and a fired night aide. Caleb wasn't fired. Not yet. Caleb's hand found the back of my chair, steady but restrained. I walked to the door and opened it. Leave, Preston. He looked at me for a long moment, searching for the little sister who used to apologize just to make dinner less uncomfortable. She was not available. After he left, I locked the door and sent the agreement photos to Rachel. Caleb finally exhaled. I looked at the empty hallway through the peephole. For the first time, Preston had not come to warn me. He had come because he was afraid. By Monday morning, Briar Glen stopped sounding polite. Rachel forwarded me the first formal response before I had finished my coffee. It was stiff, careful, and terrified in the way legal departments get terrified when friendliness stops working. Briar Glen confirmed receipt of the preservation request. They would retain medication administration records, billing histories, incident reports, internal communication, and hallway camera footage to the extent available. To the extent available. Rachel called that phrase a warning label with shoes. The Pennsylvania Long-Term Care Ombudsman Office opened an inquiry. They did not storm the building because real oversight rarely arrives like television. It arrives through calls, requests, interviews, signatures, and people suddenly remembering they should have followed policy months ago. By Wednesday, a nurse manager from Nana's wing had been placed on administrative leave. Briar Glen did not say why. They used words like procedural review and documentation concern, which meant someone had touched a hot stove and was now pretending the kitchen had always been smoky. Caleb read the email twice at my kitchen table. She ignored 3 follow-up notes, he said quietly. You knew? I suspected. I didn't know she buried them. He looked older than 37 in that moment. Not weak, just tired from being right too early. Then came billing. Rachel found 2 other families with similar charges. Private monitoring add-on, family liaison processing, enhanced evening support. Clean names, dirty pattern. One daughter in King of Prussia said her father had been charged for services he never received. A son in media said his mother's bill increased after she was moved to a premium care plan no one could explain clearly. Nana had not been the only one. That made me furious in a colder way. Personal betrayal burns. Pattern betrayal freezes. On Thursday afternoon, the Winslow Family Foundation Board held an emergency meeting. I was not invited. Preston probably thought that mattered. It did not. Rachel sent the documents to the board chair, Marjorie Bell, along with a short cover letter that did not yell, accuse, or decorate. It simply arranged the facts where no one could step around them. Caleb's original report, the edited summary, Denise's statement, Nana's authorization, Janice Moore's email, billing comparisons, Preston's attempted privacy agreement. By 4:18 p.m., the Gala page disappeared from the foundation website. By 5:02, the donor ticket link stopped working. By 6:30, Briarglen's platinum sponsor logo had been removed from the foundation's homepage. Mom called me 17 times that evening. I watched the screen light up until the apartment looked haunted. Caleb did not tell me to answer. He reheated soup and set a bowl beside me. Tomato, hot enough to make Mr. Leonard proud. At 7:11, the board released a statement. The Winslow Family Foundation is postponing its 25th anniversary gala, pending an independent review of sponsor relationships, conflict procedures, and recent concerns involving senior care partners. Postponing, not canceling. Rich people never cancel shame. They postpone it until council approves better language. The next sentence named my mother. Vivian Hale Winslow will temporarily step aside from her role as chair during the review. Temporarily. Another beautiful word trying to drag a corpse through a side door. Preston's trouble came later that night. A board member with more conscience than loyalty leaked that his company had been in early talks with an investment group connected to Briar Glen Healthcare Group for a senior living development in Montgomery County. Preston had also approved Nana's premium care package while holding limited financial power of attorney for her care billing. Conflict of interest. There it was, dressed at last in its proper clothes. Dad came to my apartment the next morning. I saw him through the peephole, standing in the hall with no overcoat, as if he had forgotten weather existed. Dr. Arthur Winslow, the man who taught communities how to hear the vulnerable, looked suddenly like a man who had misplaced his own lecture notes. I opened the door with the chain still on. His eyes moved from my face to the gap between us. "Mara," he said, "may I come in?" "No." He swallowed. "I read the reports. I know. I did not understand how much had been changed." "You did not want to." That landed. I saw it. He looked down at the floor. "I wrote Caleb a cruel letter." "You wrote me one too." His mouth opened, then closed. For once, my father had no paragraph ready. I stepped closer to the chain. "You taught people to listen to the vulnerable," I said. "You just forgot to do it at home." His eyes reddened, but I did not open the door wider. Tears were not keys. I had learned that from my mother. After he left, I checked my phone. One new voicemail from Mom. Then another. Then another. I did not play them. Across town, a ballroom that should have held donors, champagne, speeches, and my mother's perfect smile sat with its lights off. No Senior Dignity Fund banner, no Briar Glen logo, no standing ovation for Compassion Soul by the plate. For the first time in 25 years, my mother had no stage. Mom came to my apartment 3 days after the board statement. She did not look like Vivian Hale Winslow, chairwoman, donor favorite, woman of cream silk and controlled smiles. She looked like my mother, after a storm had found every window she forgot to lock. Her hair was pinned badly. Her mascara had gathered under one eye. In her hands, she held no folder, no statement, no flowers. Good. I had no vase left for performances. "Mara," she said, "please." I let her in because Caleb was there, and because fear no longer made my decisions for me. She stood in my living room, looking at the stacks of documents on the table as if paper had become a wild animal. "I did not steal from my mother," she said. "I know." Her face broke with relief too early. I never wanted to hurt her. You were willing to wait while she was hurting. Her mouth trembled. I thought after the gala, we could address it properly. The foundation needed that event. The sponsor money was tied to programs that help real people. Nana is a real person. Mom flinched. I stepped closer, slow enough that she could not pretend I was attacking her. You did not wait for the right time, Mom. You waited for the convenient time. Nana was never convenient to you. She sat down like her knees had been cut. There were tears, many of them. The old me would have rushed to soften the room. The old me had been trained to rescue adults from the consequences of their own choices. That woman was tired. So I gave Mom conditions instead of comfort. Nana leaves Briar Glen this week. She chooses the new place with me and Denise. Mom nodded quickly. Preston loses access to our care billing. A professional fiduciary takes over, and every statement goes to Rachel. Another nod, smaller. You do not use Nana's name, face, notes, or story in any foundation material ever again. Mara, I would never. You already did. That ended the sentence. The foundation hires an independent reviewer for sponsor conflicts. The findings go to the board, not to you. And no one contacts Caleb asking him to smooth this over so the Winslow name can breathe again. Mom looked toward him then. Caleb stood near the kitchen doorway, quiet as ever. He was not enjoying her collapse. That was the difference between justice and cruelty. Justice does not need to grin. I'm sorry, Mom whispered to him. He nodded once. Mrs. Winslow? Not, it's okay. Not, I forgive you. Just her name, handed back with manners and a locked gate. Preston fought longer, naturally. Men like my brother think accountability is a negotiation with better shoes. But the board did not protect him, and Rachel was not impressed by his tone. His limited power over Nana's care billing was revoked. A fiduciary stepped in. His Montgomery County deal cooled so fast, it probably needed a coat. Dad met Caleb in the parking lot of Nana's new residence, a smaller place outside media with less marble and better staff ratios. I watched from the car as Arthur Winslow stood before the man he had dismissed in 3 pages. I judged you by your shift, your uniform, and my own arrogance, Dad said. Caleb looked at him for a long moment. I don't need respect because you got caught being wrong, he said. Respect the next person before you need them. Dad lowered his head. No hug, no music, no cheap little bow tied around the wound. Just truth, standing in cold air. By Thanksgiving, Nana was settled. She still had foggy hours. She still repeated questions. She still hated oatmeal with the passion of a constitutional scholar. But she was safer, heard, less afraid. Caleb and I did not go to Bryn Mawr. We hosted Thanksgiving in his South Philly apartment with a turkey breast, stuffing from Ruth's old recipe, cranberry sauce from the grocery store, and mismatched plates. The table wobbled. The gravy was lumpy. The pie crust cracked down the middle. Nana took one bite and said, "Finally, a meal that knows it is a meal." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my fork. Later, Moon River played softly from Caleb's speaker. Nana sat by the window, her notebook resting beside her hand. I looked at Caleb across the little table and thought of the 30 empty chairs. At first, I believed they proved I had been abandoned. Now, I understood. They made room for the truth to sit down. Family is not measured by a last name, a degree, a donation, or a speech delivered beneath perfect lights. It is measured in the moment someone vulnerable speaks, and who stays to listen when the truth becomes inconvenient. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like for the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you are listening from. Thank you for staying until the end. May you have health, peace, and the courage to protect your own dignity. Goodbye for now, and I will see you again in the next story on Revenge Glow.